I mean, of course it has its disadvantages.
Curfew.
Yeah, but it's energizing having someone live with you who has big dreams.
Rock star.
What happened to Senator?
That was last week.
Dreams, that's what it's all about.
Can I get my nose pierced?
Dream on, kid.
Rebecca Schaeffer was born on the 6th of November in 1967. She was the only child of Dana and Benson Schaeffer. She seemed to have just excellent parents. They made sure that she grew up in a happy home, and they clearly had good parenting skills. Rebecca was very outgoing and she had a great personality. So she began her career as a teen model, and the woman that had this agency, she remembers the day that Rebecca walked into the room, and she said that she just knew straight away. So she began doing modeling for like catalogs and TV commercials. This guy said that knew her. He said that she was good looking, but her personality was even better. And from just watching footage of her on YouTube and seeing pictures of her, and you can just you can't help but like her. She's just so adorable. I wanted to do this episode was just because it truly is a tragedy, because everyone who knew her or knew of her, that's exactly what they will say. What a waste, she was just so a beautiful, young, talented woman, very driven to, just very driven in life, full of energy, and it's really tragic. And we're going to get to what happens to Rebecca very soon. Rebecca was also a very kind person, and I believe that it was really her kindness that got her into this serious trouble. While she was doing the teen modeling for catalogs and commercials, she also had got an agent that was for the acting industry. And the first role she ever got was in a Woody Allen film, but it was very brief. The film was called Radio Days, and she was also working as a waitress. Often young people that aspire to be actors, they have to be patient and just make sure that they can get to as many auditions as possible. She moved from Oregon to New York, and it was a part of her, sort of like going to be where it must have been recommended to her and her family that she moved to New York, because this would be where she would have a much better chance of starting a successful career in acting. Through her modeling, she managed to get on the front cover of a very popular magazine which was called 17, and this caught the eye of some producers that were about to be making a comedy series, and they were actively beginning to do castings. The comedy series was going to be called Sister Sam, and it would be starring Pam Dauber. Rebecca goes to the auditions and she does it, and she ends up getting the role. And this is just a big deal, a huge big deal, because the show was going to be a popular show, and she must have been so delighted and so excited about this. What's really ironic about this is that the role she was going to be playing was of a young teen who had moved out of Oregon to live with her sister, her older sister, because the parents had both died. And the reason it's ironic is because she is from Oregon, where she's moved out from her parents, and the producers, they probably, before they start doing the filming, they get the actors together to sort of mix it up a bit, and Rebecca Schaeffer, she just gets along with everyone, you know, and they all get along with each other, and you can clearly see, you know, that they did all really get along. I mean, I watched a few episodes of the program, and it's quite a nice show. But Rebecca Schaeffer and Pam Dauber, who was going to be playing her older sister in the show, they really get along. They connect very well. They connect so much that Rebecca ends up moving in with her, and Pam actually treats her like her younger sister in real life, and she really looks after her, knowing that she's moved away from her parents in Oregon. And it just goes to show like how well they got along and how much they connected with each other, that even in real life they lived together. And that just also adds to the irony of the fact that their roles on screen were so similar to what they were actually doing in real life. The first season of this series was a hit and the public loved it, but during the second season, all of a sudden the ratings dropped. So unfortunately they ended up cancelling doing any more. But Rebecca Schaeffer went on to do other supporting roles. She could clearly act a versatile spectrum of roles. She was very talented. She did not waste time. She made sure that she had a good agent and that the agent was getting her auditions. But something happened one day while she was on set. She had been getting letters from fans sent to the studio where she worked. At this point, she's not really an A-list celebrity, so she's not having an overwhelming amount of mail. And so she was able to read through letters, and actually she would want to respond to show her appreciation. She wants to say thank you, and she wants to let them know that she paid attention to each letter, and just to make sure that she responds and that it's from her, purely because Rebecca was a nice person and she came from a nice family. From his parents' house, Robert John Bardo wrote letter after letter to the actress. At times he quoted song lyrics. I think that she didn't want the celebrity status at all to change her, so she would, if possible, reply to any letters that she received. And when she got the letters from him, she must have thought it was sweet of him that, you know, for her to not respond, it would have been worse than to politely respond, I suppose. So she does, and she says something somewhere along the lines of, thank you, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever written to me. And by doing this, it was just a bad idea. He interpreted this as the beginning of a special relationship. He must have thought that those letters he'd sent her had an effect on her. She was, actually in a real relationship at the time with a very nice guy who was an emerging film director. His name was Brad Silberling, and today he's a film director, and he's been involved in some really big movies. And she was in a relationship with him at the time. This now encourages him to make moves to meet her and to give her gifts in person. He attempted first by finding the filming location of My Sister Sam, and he got turned away by the security. This must have really annoyed him and frustrated him. But he takes things to a whole nother level, and he seeks out a private investigator whom he paid, I think it was something like $3,000, to find out where she lived, which he does, and he then gives the address to John Bardo. Something had enraged him, and it was that he saw a scene of her which was a bit of a sexual scene. This unfortunately triggered him enough to get himself a gun to take with him to her address. When My Sister Sam series had ended, she got roles in a few films, as I've already said, and things were really happening, and she was in a relationship with a guy in the same business industry as herself. She was now renting a house in West Hollywood, in a convenient and pleasant location. And, there was just a lot of really exciting things going on. She apparently, she's even said to have been in the running for the lead role in the romantic comedy called Pretty Woman. That went on to be a really good movie and a popular one too. On the morning of July the 18th, 1989, she's at this house expecting to be receiving a package delivery that she was told she'd be getting that morning. And if it all went well, it could change her life radically. What she was expecting was a script for a big role playing Mary, the daughter of Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 3. And she would have a few hours to look at the script before auditioning in front of Francis Ford Coppola. Now, let's just remember that Rebecca was beautiful, but she was very talented. And I reckon that it's most likely that she definitely would have got this role. She's expecting this to be the package. She goes and opens the door, and standing there is Robert John Bardo. He's carrying a card that she had sent him as an appreciation for his letters. Also, reportedly, he was carrying a copy of a book called The Catcher in the Rye. And this is the same book that Mark David Chapman was carrying when he murdered John Lennon in 1980. She greeted him, and when she quickly noticed it wasn't a delivery man, she said, "Please take care," and closed the door. So he goes, but only to a local food outlet, where he sits down outside. I think it was called John's Restaurant on Beverly Boulevard. He sits there and he eats some food, and then he returns to her address 1 hour later. Around 10:15, the door goes again, and she answers and is shot in the chest twice with a handgun through a paper bag. Bardo fled the scene quickly. A neighbouring witness, hearing the gunshots and seeing some strange activity happening, calls the police and an ambulance. When the ambulance arrives at the hospital, Rebecca stops breathing and she doesn't survive the 2 shots. Some think that she died on the doorstep of the house, but this is not true. It was actually when the ambulance arrived outside the hospital that she passed away. Rebecca's mother was contacted by phone at the Portland Community College where she worked. And the call said, "Mrs. Schaeffer, I have terrible news. This morning Rebecca was shot and killed." One of the things that the father of Rebecca Schaeffer described, remembering on the day that he heard of the news, was that when he was sitting in the car and they were travelling up to the hospital, that the roofs on the houses were moving. The following day, Tucson police received a report of a man near a freeway yelling that he had killed Rebecca Schaeffer. He was quite quickly identified as the person seen in the area of Rebecca's home around the time of the murder. Her death not only devastated her parents, but it devastated friends and her partner, Brad Silberling. Even though John Bardo was seen and heard yelling that he'd killed her next to a freeway, it ended up in a court, and his lawyer claimed that his mental health illness was really the cause of all of this. It is true that John Bardo was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that obviously has to be acknowledged here. But the level of his insanity was not to the point where he didn't know what he was doing. He planned out this murder because of his dangerous level of obsession with an individual. Interestingly, the prosecutor against him was Marcia Clark, whom you might know from the famous O.J. Simpson trial. And she made a very good case to show that John Bardo was not insane. And Marcia Clark won this case.
Talk about 20 years old, one of the most beautiful young girls I've ever met in my life, murdered a few weeks after we finished the movie. So I've dedicated the movie to her, and nice. She's so beautiful in it. There's 5 people that play me before I come on the screen, and she is the last one. She plays the character that I play in her 20s, and she's wonderful. I'm so glad I hired her now, because this is a real tribute to her, this movie.
It is.
Yeah.